Chapter 96. The Kusagaker Ninja's collapse continues. Border of the Land of Grass. The dirt road was not exactly rough, but it stretched three long shadows across the ground. The air held the lingering damp of aim, laced with grass and earth. Compared with that forever sodden country of relentless rainfall, these green low hills and surprisingly open fields felt almost like paradise. Naoki stretched hard, sunlight splashing his face and chasing off the mildew clinging from the rainy front. Finally, no more sleeping in tents you can wring water out of. He blew out a breath, glancing around. Land of Grass is not half bad, huh? Makoto did not pick it up. She tucked a windblown strand of black hair behind her ear, scanning the surroundings with calm eyes. At last she looked to the red-haired boy walking point. Mission first, Naoki-senpai. Remember our goal, track Iwa's movements. Her voice was clean and crisp. Ryokan, Kusagaker, the key intel point is here, right? The corner of Ryo's mouth lifted in that habitual, faintly mocking line. Of course, he said quietly. A small nation jammed in the cracks is always a wall that leaks wine from both sides. Come on, let's take a look at Kusagaker. The instant they stepped through the village gate, all three faltered, as if something had caught their feet. Two words hit harder than any report could: filthy and sick. Crooked wooden huts crowded together over mud, looking like the next stiff breeze would fold them. The rot of old timbers mixed with a faint reek of human waste, stabbing the nose. Narrow lanes were a mess of muck. The sparse passers-by were sallow and thin, eyes hollow and dull. When a glance did land on the three, there was no curiosity, only thick, uncut suspicion and undisguised dislike. This dump is a ninja village. Naoki's eyes bulged, his voice sliding off key. Konoha's sewer outlets are brighter than this. Where did their mission rewards go? Down a dog's throat. Maybe into the daimyo's vault. Or, Ryo snorted, ripping the facade without mercy, maybe certain people's purses got so heavy they collapsed the whole village. The Land of Grass should be rich. Get a pig for a daimyo and a leader who only worships money, and the signboard falls right off. Makoto's gaze drifted over those numb, or openly hostile, faces. Her brows knit, catching the deeper wrongness. Ryokan, she said very low, the way they are looking at us, it is like they are warding off trouble. They had not gone 50 paces deeper before three men in grass-green, ragged uniforms blocked the way. The leader's face was heaped with slabby muscle. A scar ran from brow to chin. A dry stalk hung at an angle in his mouth. His eyes raked them with smug superiority. When he saw how young they were, the contempt nearly spilled. Stop. Konoha. Scarface spat the stem, voice cold and hard. Yes. Ryo's expression did not change. He treated the rudeness like air. Konoha Chunin, Kamiyama Ryo, leading a squad on official duty. Standard intel exchange regarding. Exchange my ass. Scarface cut him off, volume jumping. Kusa does not take visitors, especially from Konoha. The two Chunin behind him stepped forward, hands casually, yet precisely, settling on their kunai. Naoki could not swallow that. He lunged a step. Hey, what kind of attitude is that? We are allies, ironclad. Is this how Kusagaker talks to an ally? Scarface sneered, contempt dripping. Allies. Spare me. You kids playing soldier need to roll out before I make you. His gaze flicked over Ryo's striking red hair without a spark of recognition, never linking it with the red-haired devil currently ripping through the ninja world. To him, they were pampered brats out to play. Kamiyama Ryo. Familiar name. Who cares? Makoto's frown deepened. This was not mere bad manners, they were deliberately provoking. But inside Scarface's bark, Ryo caught the key, especially from Konoha. His eyes tightened. Fragments snapped together. Use their age to bully them off. Fine, kids are easy to cow. But an alliance is still an alliance. Even if you hate it, you keep up appearances. To tear the mask off entirely, wrong. A special rejection just of Konoha. Why? Who is in the village that makes them this scared? When Naoki challenged their attitude, that flicker in the man's eyes, like a man afraid of touching a live wire. Oh. Ryo's quiet voice rasped like ice on glass and stabbed straight through Scarface. So, no hosting allies, because you are busy hosting a different guest. Scarface's face twitched. His eyes suddenly went skittish. The bulldozed bravado drained out. Shut your damn mouth. Do not spout nonsense. Louder now, but thin and anxious. Get lost. Now. That reaction was the best answer, nailing Ryo's guess in place. TCH. Ryo had his decision. Forcing a tear through now was not the time, and not needed. Looks like we came at a bad time. He lifted a hand, steady, onto Naoki's shoulder just as the boy sparked again. His face relaxed into an almost lazy smile. Fine. When the host is not welcoming, guests should not overstay. That warmth of yours. We simply cannot afford it. Naoki, Makoto, let's go. They are busy entertaining. He turned on his heel and left, crisp and clean, steps even picking up a hint of leisurely stroll. Makoto fell right in, catching Naoki, still throwing daggers with his eyes, and tugging him after Ryo. Seriously. We are tucking tail. Naoki hissed, unwilling. Why? Leave them to farm mushrooms. Ryo did not even look back, his voice drifting clearly down the unnaturally quiet lane. We are not in a hurry. Take 2 days off. Land of grass, nice hills, nice water. I hear there is a creek to the east. Roasting game beats getting glared at in this dump. He said it loud enough for the eavesdropping Kusa sentries on the roadside to hear every syllable. He wanted them to file the trio under spoiled junior officers on a sightseeing trip, gone on their way, nothing to worry about. Scarface watched them disappear and hawked up a wad of phlegm. TCH. Know your place. Brats. His tight shoulders sagged. As long as these Konoha kids did not stumble into Iwa's honored guests, there should not be trouble. Dusk stained the grass in dark gold. By a creekside copse, a campfire cracked and leapt, painting the trio's faces. Ryo. Naoki finally burst. What are you playing at? We are really running. What about the mission? Iwa intel. And those Kusa punks, right now I want to go back and knock their teeth in. Across the flames, Makoto was stripping a luckless deer with a kunai, precise and steady. She glanced at Ryo, firelight caught in her pupils, and waited. Ryo prodded the fire. Sparks hopped. The curve at his mouth flattened. When he spoke, the warmth seemed to drain from the night. Tail between our legs. Or did you just miss the devil in their eyes? Devil, my ass. Their brains got slammed in a door. Naoki flopped down, sulking. First, even a paper alliance does not expel envoys. That is spitting in your ally's face. Kusa's leadership may be stupid, but not so stupid they ignore the rules entirely. Unless, Ryo's voice dropped. His gaze cut across his 2 teammates. Unless there is a reason big enough to make them drive us out at any cost. As in, their own lives. Ryokan means, Makoto's kunai paused. A glint lit her eyes. Iwa are already here. Right. Ryo's reply was a nail. They beat us by a step. Either paid a fortune or got Kusa by the throat. Enough that they tossed even pretense. When I turned the question back, Scarface's face collapsed in real time. Naoki slapped his thigh. Damn. So that is why Konoha set them off. They are afraid we will spot Iwa in the village. Those grass mutts went full weathervane and started plotting with Iwa behind our backs. He clenched his fist till it ticked. How deep the tie goes. Ryo stared through the flames, as if he could see Kusagakur's silhouette swallowed by dusk. But the important intel is inside, and tied to Iwa's core deployments. Then what are we waiting for? Go in and get it. Naoki bounced, eager. Ryo gave him a slanted look that said, did a door really crush your skull? Want to make a scene big enough to pull every Iwa out to play? Naoki deflated like a punctured wineskin. Then, what? The corner of Ryo's mouth curled again, the cold confidence of a man with the board in his hands. They think we are useless and that chewing us fixes everything. Fine. We will play along. In the dark, his voice came down like nails. Half false, half true, by time. The plan unrolled at once. In the open, Ryo's squad became the Konoha tour group. By day, they lazed in a conspicuous, open spot by the creek. Naoki whooped over a homemade fishing rod. Makoto sat quietly in tree shade. Ryo tinkered with a little gadget he had brought, coaxing out a simple music player that wafted popular tunes over the water. The smell of roasting meat drifted for too long, drawing Kusa sentries to glance from a distance, mutter, useless brats, and yawn back to their posts. At the camp, Naoki griping over skewered fish, Makoto quietly sorting gear, the tinny music looping, nothing seemed off. But in the unnoticed angles, Makoto's gaze cut through the flicker of coals to Ryo's back in the shadows. Naoki was still cussing about the rod. The humiliation from Scarface's barking still seemed lodged in Naoki's throat. Cowards. Useless. He bit into an overdone fish and scowled at the bitter char. I swear he waved the blackened tail, with no target to vent on. Wait. Ryo gave him one word. Firelight rose and fell. Makoto, a little farther off under a tree, lowered her eyes and repacked a water-spotted pouch. In the moonlight her lashes cast soft gray shadows on her lids. She watched Ryo's straight red silhouette blur, then melt into the tree-edge darkness. The small, deliberate nearnesses over the last days, the brief crossings of eyes, the wordless passings of tools, each action like an invisible strand of silk, winding, slow and unnoticed. As that bit of red finally fused with the night, the line of her lips quivered, almost imperceptibly. She lowered her gaze to the edge of her wooden geta on the damp grass, where a slim ankle peeked. Moon and firelight glazed it gently. The memory of that afternoon dressing his wounds slid through. A minuscule ripple crossed her heart and vanished. Kusa's arrogance and sloppiness became the perfect cover for Ryo's moves. 2 days straight, the music and meet by the river played on schedule. Kusa's watch slackened. The men on surveillance stopped even pretending, just wrote them off as Konoha fools wasting rations. Scarface's report upward was smug. Konoha's rice buckets. Sent a few kids to do what? One bark and they ran off for a picnic. Kusa's leader sprawled in a broken chair and snorted. Konoha. That is the level. Trash. The three rested as usual. Ryo, citing strategy, sat a bit apart, eyes closed, actually stretching his powerful observational sense toward the village, fishing for suspicious chakra pulses, Iwa signatures or a meeting site. Nawaki gnawed meat, bored. Eat roast every day and I will turn into roast. Ryo, are we still sitting here? Did your brain? Makoto gave Nawaki a helpless look. Patience. Ryokan is looking for an opening. And then Ryo's senses brushed a thread of chakra, so faint and so uneasy, curled deep in tall grass near the camp. It held fear and hunger and a distinctive spark of life. Familiar, Kushina's lineage. And it was a child. Ryo's eyes snapped open. He turned his head that way and said, low and absolute, who is there? Come out. Hollow Diamond. You can read the ahead chapter on Pat if you're interested. Patreon.com/Blownleaves. Just remove the hyphen to access normally. Chapter 97. Betrayed by their closest ally. The tall grass shook violently, rustling with a sharp sound. Whoever was hiding inside froze, startled. Their breathing stopped, and even their faint chakra signature vanished completely. Nawaki and Makoto tensed at once, weapons silently drawn. Someone's there. They waited for a long moment. Then, the grass rustled again, softer this time. A small, thin figure slowly emerged, like a frightened rabbit creeping into the moonlight. She stopped at the border where the moonlight met the campfire's glow, head bowed, trembling uncontrollably. She looked no older than 7 or 8, her tattered clothes filthy with mud and crushed leaves. But what caught their eyes most was her hair. Even through the grime, the deep crimson hue could not be hidden. In Uzumaki. Ryo's heart sank. Memories of how Kusagakure treated stranded Uzumaki flooded his mind, the horrors of living medical packs, of Karen's mother torn to death. And this little girl. Nawaki suddenly blurted out, shocked, another redhead. Not every redhead is your relative, Makoto shot back, rolling her eyes. But her expression soon softened, pity and doubt flickering across her face. How had an Uzumaki child ended up here? Ryo swallowed the cold fury burning in his chest. He picked up a freshly roasted skewer of venison, its fat sizzling, and spoke gently. You must be hungry. Come here, this is for you. A lock of his own red hair fell forward, glinting in the firelight. The little girl, Uzumaki Kaori, looked up, fearfully watching him. Her eyes caught that flicker of red, the same as her own. For a fleeting moment, she felt a spark of connection, but fear drowned it instantly. Her gaze locked on the meat. Its smell made her throat tighten. Hunger overwhelmed her, but terror held her still. She had seen what happened when her clan reached for food, the screams, the biting, the treatments. She trembled harder and took a step back. Ryo didn't move closer. He just waited, holding out the food with quiet patience, eyes soft and calm. The fire crackled. Nawaki and Makoto watched in silence. Time crawled. Finally, perhaps it was Ryo's gentle posture or the irresistible scent of meat, but Kaori gathered her courage. Step by trembling step, she moved closer to the fire. Cautiously, as if handling something fragile, she accepted the skewer with both hands. Thank you, she whispered, voice barely audible. A second later, hunger consumed her reason. She tore into the meat desperately, too fast to chew. A chunk caught in her throat, she choked, face turning red, coughing violently. Ryo immediately handed her a water flask. Kaori gulped greedily until the blockage went down. She gasped for breath, then looked up timidly, wanting to thank him. In that instant, Ryo, Nawaki, and Makoto saw her face clearly, small, pale, streaked with tears, dirt, and oil. Her skin clung to bone, her eyes far too large for her face, filled with terror carved into her soul. When her sleeve slipped down, several scars showed, bite marks, some new, some old. Nawaki inhaled sharply. Makoto covered her mouth, horrified. Those bastards. Nawaki roared, standing abruptly. Who did this? The grass scum. Kaori flinched, nearly dropping her food. Terror seized her, she shrank backward, trembling. Shut up, Nawaki. Ryo barked sharply. He swallowed his rage and forced a calm smile. Don't be afraid. You're safe now. Eat slowly, there's more. He cut another piece of venison with his kunai and put it over the fire. Kaori hesitated, but hunger won. She ate again, slower this time, sneaking glances at the three around her. When she finished, the energy from food and exhaustion from starvation collided. Her body swayed, and she sat down heavily, too tired to move. Don't move too much, Ryo said softly. Your body needs to adjust. You've been hungry for too long. Kaori nodded obediently, still keeping her head down. Ryo studied her crimson hair, then asked quietly, Child, you're from the Uzumaki clan, aren't you? Kaori froze. Her eyes widened in panic. He knew. Because of her hair. Was this going to bring her pain again? She trembled violently, worse than before. Her eyes dulled with despair, and her lips quivered. Finally, she lifted her thin arm, sleeve falling back to reveal scarred skin. Why you, sir, do you want my power too? Her voice broke. Please, please be gentle. I'm scared of pain. Her eyes squeezed shut. Tears spilled freely, waiting for the familiar agony to come. Nawaki and Makoto went rigid, as if struck by lightning. Looking at that thin arm covered in teeth marks, they felt their blood turn to ice. Now they understood. Those scars were not random wounds, they were the marks of a life devoured again and again. Nawaki's face turned white in the firelight. He snapped completely. Why? Ryo. Tell me why. The Uzumaki were our allies. Why didn't they escape to Konoha? Why didn't Konoha save them? Ryo seized him by the collar, eyes sharp as blades. Why? Because Konoha's leaders never needed those stray Uzumaki. They only wanted the Uzumaki's sealing techniques and one suitable vessel for the nine tails. That's all. He shoved Nawaki's chest with his finger. See now, Nawaki. This is your precious village. Your noble leader's handiwork. Allies. In the face of profit, what is an ally's life worth? They let Uzushiogakure fall. They delayed rescue on purpose. Why? Because they wanted the other villages to suffer from unstable Jinchuriki. Konoha only needed the nine tails, and nothing else. His voice turned icy, thick with hate. That's why, after the Uzumaki massacre, they only took Kushina. That's why the survivors didn't flee to the fire country, they knew. Because the ally's knife cuts deeper than the enemy's. And while Konoha looked away, Kusagakure swooped in, turning these survivors into living medical packs, drained until they died. This is your shinobi world, Nawaki. Beneath the sunlight lies rotten blood. Wake up. Each word struck like a hammer. Nawaki's ideals, Konoha, its leaders, the will of fire, all shattered. He fell to his knees, pale and trembling. His fist slammed into the dirt again and again until his strength was gone. You're already breaking. Ryo scoffed. He glanced at him, then turned toward the girl by the fire, his tone soft again. Don't mind him, little one. I'm Kamiyama Ryo from Konoha. Don't worry, I don't bite. I won't use you as a medical pack. He nodded toward her arm and smiled gently. What's your name? Uzumaki. Kaori, she murmured. Her voice was fragile, but steadied under his gaze. The warmth of the fire, the smell of meat, and that familiar red hair made her believe. Your family? Ryo asked softly, though he already knew. Kaori's pupils shrank. Her voice cracked. They're all dead. Everyone, they bit them. Enough. Ryo placed his hand on her head firmly. It's over. Come with me to Konoha. No one will bite you again. You'll live like a person. Take her. The thought was clear. Tsunade could handle her papers. Kushina, her last living clanswoman, would be happy. The council's outrage. A problem for another day. Really? I can. She whispered. Yes, Ryo said firmly. You can. I swear it. Nawaki said suddenly, raising a trembling hand. His eyes were bloodshot, but filled with conviction. Me too, Makoto added, voice small but steady. Something bright inside her shattered quietly. Thank you. Kaori sobbed. Tears streamed down her face. For the first time in years, she trusted someone. Night deepened. After washing away the grime and changing into Makoto's spare clothes, Kaori fell asleep on the grass nearby. By the fire, Ryo, Nawaki, and Makoto sat in heavy silence. The flames crackled softly, but could not burn away the weight of truth. Naoki's eyes stayed fixed on the fire. Finally, he rasped, Ryo, tell me. Why? The Uzumaki were our allies. Why did Konoha do nothing? Why did they abandon them? Ryo smiled faintly, without warmth. You want the official answer, or the real one? Naoki clenched his fists. There's a difference. Say it, Makoto whispered. The truth. Ryo chuckled coldly. The official excuse. We couldn't risk another great ninja war. We had to consider Konoha's lives first. The balance of power must be preserved. He sneered. Sounds noble, doesn't it? Just like the lies your sister heard from the elders. All for the greater good of Konoha. The greater good. To hell with that. Naoki roared. He punched the nearest tree, bark exploding. They feared saving the Uzumaki would start a war, but they had no problem turning aim into a bloodbath. The air went still. Makoto clutched her cloak tightly, face pale. Well said, Ryo said, clapping once, his smile sharp as frost. Because beneath that noble mask lies reality. The Uzumaki were Senju allies, not the councils. The Senju have long been discarded. Konoha now belongs to Sarutobi, Shimura, Mitokado, Udatane. Your Iron Alliance. Worthless. Why risk lives to save them when you can let them die and seize their sealing scrolls and jutsu treasures instead? He laughed bitterly. Much easier. As for Kushina, she was just a new container for the Nine Tails. If containers ever became common, do you really think the elders would stay merciful? Every word struck deep. Naoki slumped, drained of strength. Hiruzen's face twisted in the firelight, melting into shadow. The war in aim. Makoto's voice trembled. That's real too, isn't it? Of course. Ryo lay back, staring at the stars. Aim got too strong, too independent. So they crushed it, made an example of it. That's the greater good. War. Suna, Iwa, Kumo, they all want blood. It's just another feast of slaughter. He sighed long and deep. The blood from the first great ninja war has dried too long. A new storm is already gathering overhead. The fire crackled. Naoki's face twisted in the dim light, faith warring with fury. Makoto bit her lip, trembling. Chapter 98. Reckoning begins. Night pressed down like wet ink on the crowns of the towering trees, stingy even with starlight. Makoto kept her clear eyes slanted toward the small figure beside her. Her clean outer robe was wrapped tight around Uzumaki Kaori's tiny body. The little girl curled on the cold ground, sunk in uneasy sleep. Even in her nightmares, her delicate brows were knotted hard, bracing against remembered terror. Beside her, Naoki crouched, his muscles bunched, fists clenched so tight his knuckles blanched. Shame and fury still burned from earlier. Now, looking at Kaori's fragile helplessness, a purer blaze surged up, close to consuming reason altogether. The Grassnen lurking in the dark, this blood debt would be paid with their lives. Suddenly, a cold aura slid through the night without a sound, the kind that seemed to freeze the soul. A figure coalesced at the edge of the firelight as if condensed from shadow itself. Ryo stood there. Makoto's heart jumped. Naoki snapped his head around, the flames in his eyes flaring with hard-to-hide anticipation. Plan change. Ryo's voice was low, stripped of waste. Target. Kusagaker. Naoki's head shot up, battle heat blasting out of him. Good. Then. Ryo's cold glance cut him off. The pressure alone pushed the rest of the words back down his throat. Makoto's brows tightened. She heard the undertone beneath Ryo's words, and her heart sank. Ryokan, what do you need from us? Her gaze flicked, unbidden, toward the sleeping Kaori. We have to infiltrate. No noise. Ryo's eyes settled on Kaori. The meaning was obvious. Bringing a defenseless child, one who could cry out at any moment, into an enemy nest. That wasn't a mission. That was walking into a trap. I go alone. Are you insane? Naoki's worry and pent-up rage burst through. He shot to his feet, voice a scraped whisper. Alone. That's the Grassnen's den. And Iwa's dogs are inside. And. He remembered the rumors, urgency rasping his throat. Iwa. Onoki, that old monster. Your bounty on the black market is up to 100 million. If you go in now, the entire village is your gallows. They'll swarm you like hounds on blood. Exactly. Ryo's voice cracked like ice, sharp enough to cut through Naoki's doubts. We move before they wake from their smug little dream. His gaze slid over Makoto and Naoki, a quenched blade of winter. One strike to the throat. Root and branch, gone. You too. His eyes returned to Kaori. Take her far. Farther. Wait for my signal. Naoki opened his mouth, and Makoto's cool palm pressed his shoulder down. Her hand was cold and faintly trembling. She lifted her eyes and met Ryo's silver gaze head-on. No anger, no recklessness. Only a dead calm chill. An absolute will and power that would grind any obstacle to dust. Makoto drew a long breath. Her worry settled, transmuted into wordless trust. She nodded hard. Ryokan, be careful. Lock. Move. No signals needed. Ryo's outline blurred. Flying thunder god. Light flashed. Space twisted and swallowed all four, the fire's sparks, a few leaves kicked up by the air, and a smear of water on the ground. Wind swept through. Wet grass shivered helplessly. By the time the hum of space died in the dark woods, Makoto and Nawaki stood tens of kilometers away in a cold grove of jagged stones. Nawaki's fists creaked in his grip. Makoto startled awake from the instant shock, then accepted it. Wait for me. Ryo's voice etched itself directly into their minds, bloodless cold, every word a blade of killing intent scything across the clearing. The grass will pay this debt. Kusagaker's den. Dozens of kilometers away, in the muddled heart of the village. Oil lamps glowed like beans, their jaundiced light barely licking the corners, painting two petty, stupid faces. Boss. Scarface licked cracked lips and darted his shifty eyes around. Relief and aftershock smeared across his features. Those leave plague, they really left. Under a rickety watchtower, in a shack with a chair bursting its filthy stuffing, the grass leader slouched like a smug grub in rot. He snorted through his nose, contempt and glee in one. Ha! Bunch of nobodies. See. Little push and they ran with their tails tucked. Good riddance, spares me the eyesore. He waggled his greasy head, slitted eyes pinched to threads. If they'd torn the paper window and seen our guests. He hunched his oily neck instinctively, a blotch of fear and greed flushing his cheeks. Lucky brats know their place. Ha, ha. The laugh wheezed like a punctured bellows. Scarface tore at a slab of cold, hard pheasant. Grease dripped onto his never-cleaned forehead protector, leaving a dirtier streak. Boss, the arrangements for those people, all set. The grass leader wriggled into his wrecked chair like a fat rat on a trash heap. He dug lazily at the grime in his nails, tone full of scorn for Konoha. A sly, greedy light glittered in his slitted eyes. He could hear the abacus beads snapping. What Iowa promised would pave 3 broad stone roads, locking the grass country's trade in his fist. As long as no one stumbled on the unspeakable little job Iowa was running under the village. Grass had bowed and scraped between great nations for generations. The art of being a weathervane was in their bones. Rule 1, never be the first head on the chopping block. Leaf brats go missing. Might spark a war. Ha! They knew the game. Push the trouble far away, keep your hands clean, your face intact, and when the wind shifts, everything is still negotiable. Right now, the village was drunk on its own illusion. The preening grass boss. The self-satisfied Iowa, VIPs. All snug in their dream of safety. They didn't know a blade, tempered to pure killing, had already slipped through the gap they lived by, and now hovered over their bare throats. Absolute darkness made the perfect cloak. The warped palisade outside the village meant nothing to a true master of shadow. Ryo didn't descend from above. He streaked along the ground like a crimson lightning tear through night. He was too fast. He flickered through collapsed huts, sagging woodpiles, cobwebbed corners, and alleys, so fast he left only a smear of red, killing intent given shape, there and gone. A lazy grass patrol passed within 5 meters. Dust the crimson blur kicked up tickled their captain's nose, and still those fools felt nothing. Their slack faces were a wordless welcome mat for death. Sensory domain, full spread. Hunter's mind, engaged. Ryo's will swept out like the finest radar, silent and seamless, the moment he crossed the line. Invisible ripples, a vast taut web, covered every inch of the rotting village. The strongest signatures flared at once, the gray stone house in the center, out of place among the shacks, the only thing that could be called grand. Distinct chakra pooled inside, coarse, heavy, reeking of earth and rock. Iwanan. Not many, but each one stank of veteran blood and cruelty. And yet, wrong. No hint of a disciplined field unit. No fatigue of a long raid. Instead, a chill like a morgue. The clinical cruelty of a lab. And that gambler's fever, the sick, jittery greed before a final card is turned. Inside, the light was low. Shadows crawled and twisted on the walls like devils whispering. Across a low table sat an Iwa Jonin with a severe face, Kitsuchi, son of Onoki. His voice rasped like grit on stone, echoing through the stifling room. His knuckles tapped the tabletop, slow, heavy, each thud hammering the grass boss's heart. Time's up. Where are they? Kitsuchi lifted his lids. No warmth. Only cold scrutiny and pressure that allowed no refusal. Don't waste my time. Are you telling me you can't handle this trivial chore? The Uzumaki rats hiding in their holes, not one you can drag out. The grass boss, so loud with his underlings, stood in the lamp's fringe, a big body trembling. Sweat trickled in streams down his fat, puckered face. He squeezed out the most servile grin of his life, voice breaking with fear. Lord Kitsuchi. Please, calm your anger. Those Uzumaki wretches, they're too sly, deeper than the deepest burrow. But, give me a little more time. A day. No, half a day. Half. I swear on my head. I'll mobilize everyone who can move. We'll turn every inch of grass country over if we have to, we'll find them, every last one for you. Kitsuchi snorted through his nose, disgust and impatience. He stopped looking at the nauseating coward and dropped his gaze to the table. In the dim light lay a parchment list. Names, scrawled but clear. Worse, each had notes, last seen locations, procured, at great cost by grass spies, perhaps the lives of innocents. One stood out, in smaller script. Girl, around 7, orphaned, hideout, abandoned mine, west of village to be confirmed. So young. Not a child in Iwa's eyes, a part. A key component. Prey had been tagged on the map by greedy eyes. All that remained was the grab, and the furnace. Outside, under the eaves, the shadow was ink-thick. A figure pressed flat to stone, breath, heartbeat, temperature, everything cooled to near nothing, like the rock itself. Ryo. His sweeping senses bled through the wall as if it weren't there, taking in everything inside. Iwa's mechanical cruelty, the grass boss's obsequious cowardice barely hiding bottomless greed, the hunting list drenched in the blood and tears of Uzumaki refugees. Uzumaki orphans. Bloodline power. Jinchuriki vessels. Breeding stock. Cold fragments clicked together in Ryo's mind, then ignited. Onoki, the hungry old fox of Iwa, never wanted a second front. He had laid traps, risked elite squads, gambled the border, for the Uzumaki bloodline. To make perfect vessels. To power lost sealing arts. To birth a newer, worse weapon. Whatever the aim, the means were filth. To them, every Uzumaki in flight, ancients, toddlers, even the unborn, were consumables. Fuel to be burned. Tools to be reused. Thrown away when empty. For that ugly desire, this village, and countless Uzumaki in exile, were offerings on the altar. In the frozen depths of Ryo's eyes, killing intent boiled over, not mere anger, but something deeper, blacker, colder. While Onoki raved over maps in Iwagakure, find every Uzumaki. Bring them in. The living are vessels. The breeders breed. The dead, make more. He could never imagine that one of the key resource points he clawed for, a pure Uzumaki seed named Uzumaki Kaori, had already, by fate's mockery, been carried out of his reach like a guarded spark in a storm, by the very enemy with 100 million bounty on his head. Reckoning descends, now. To be continued. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 99. None shall be spared. Ryo moved. He folded into shadow and vanished beneath the eaves. When he reappeared, he was a phantom at the heavy, grimace-stained door of the grand stone house in the village center. Inside, the grass leader was still swearing in his greasy voice. Kitsuchi-sama. Half a day. Just half a day. I swear on my head we'll bring that brat. The words never finished. Skrrrr, crack. Metal shrieked like torn space. The thick door, strong enough to shrug off standard jutsu, exploded inward, along with a swath of adjoining stone, as if an invisible ancient claw had seized and crushed it. Wood shards and stone chips rained through the room like a storm of death. The oil lamps blew out under the shockwave. Darkness flowed in like a living thing, swallowing the room whole, leaving only wreckage, and the brief, staccato screams of the 2 Kusa Jonin who had been posted by the door. Dust swelled. Light died. But this sudden dark was Ryo's home ground. His silver eyes glittered in the grit, colder than any lamp. Observation haki had already netted every living presence in the room, positions, motions, even the next heartbeat mapped cleanly into his mind. The first. His voice was emotionless, as if nailing down the first verdict. At the table where the lamp had just gone out, the Iwa Jonin closest to the door was still locked in shock. He felt only a chill wind kiss his neck, and then the world spun. He saw a headless body tipping backward, his own, as a geyser of blood painted his comrade's face. The second. Ryo never paused, never glanced at the flying head. Kusanagi hummed through the dark like a reaper's scythe. The blood-spattered Iwa Jonin jerked up a kunai on reflex. Agony lanced his wrist. Schlacked. Steel and forearm parted together under a flash of winter light. Blood fountained. He did not even manage a scream before the second cut finished him, clean and final. Enemy attack. It's him. The black market monster. Kitsuchi, to his credit, was the first to recover. His roar, distorted by terror and fury, shattered the silence and lit the chaos. Boom. Rumble. Hold him. Protect Kitsuchi-sama. The surviving Aiwa fought like veterans. Hands flew, chakra flared. Earth style. Rock lance. Spiked spears jutted from the floor. Earth style. Earth dragon bullet. A mud dragon's head reared and lunged. Earth style. Eruption core. The floor heaved and bucked to pin and break. Light slashed through dust and dark. Death licked every angle. Ryo's mouth tilted in a thin, icy line. BMMM. A shriek like bladed thunder ripped the air. Kusanagi carved a vast, silver arc, the light almost swallowing the darkness. Not mere sword aura, but chakra condensed to the brink of substance, a crescent swelling to tens of meters in a blink. The silver crescent swept. RRRRRRRR. Hot knife through butter. Rock lances sheared to dust. The roaring earth dragon's head tore apart like a sand sculpture in surf. The bucking floor flattened under invisible weight, and the lingering edge scythed on, vaporizing everything in its fan. Yak! Ah! Dust and stone screamed again. Two Aiwa Chunin, caught midseal for follow-ups, were bisected at the waist, defenses paper-thin before that cut. The side wall split in a yawning wound, letting in starlight and torch glow, and lighting the terror contorting Kitsuchi's face. One stroke, every jutsu undone, men felled. This was not a battle on the same plane. Kitsuchi's pupils blew wide. His heart almost missed a beat. The intel had not lied. He had once sneered at his father Onoki's order, abort if you encounter Ryo. He had thought it fussing. But facing this monster, whose chakra felt like a tailed beast's hide in steel, the comparison felt merciful. Stop him. Kitsuchi howled, staggering back, hands flashing through seals. On me. Combined earth style. The Aiwa survivors were elite indeed. Fear swallowed and formation tightened, chakra braiding for a group defense. But Ryo's target was never only the Aiwa. Through dust and shadow, his gaze pinned the grass leader cowering in the farthest corner, close to fainting. Your guests, from Aiwa. His voice was quiet, but every survivor heard it as clearly as a blade at the ear. The grass leader shook like a sieve, crotch soaked, stench souring the air. Spare me, my lord, and not my fault, they forced me, I. Kusanagi answered for him with a single, smokeless point. A cold star flicked through dust and punched his brow. The heavy body wobbled, face frozen midplea, and toppled backward with a thud. The first account settled. Ryo drew back the blade and turned toward the chaos outside. Now, the rest. As if to crown his words, the village alarm finally split the night. Woo, woo, woo. The sirens wailed. Kusagakure yanked awake. Kusanen poured from their ramshackle huts, some half-dressed, some bleary, all faces stamped by fear. Intruder. At the chief's stone house. Kill him. Defend the village. Panic spread like plague. Jonin bellowed orders, trying to shape a line. Dozens of Chunin and Genin converged like a startled swarm, kunai and shuriken flashing a sea of edges in torchlight, enough to trouble even a cage. Inside, Kitsuchi and the last Jonin finished their sequence in the breath Ryo had spent speaking. Dense earth chakra nodded before them. Earth style. Earth flow wall, combined. Earth style. Stone golem carapace. A wall far thicker than any normal earth rampart, spined and towering, erupted between Ryo and the Aiwa. At the same time, a heavy rock armor plated the defenders. Their last hope, a tortoise shell to buy a heartbeat. Ryo eyed the instant wall and the rising noise of the mob outside. Fool's wall. Fools behind it. His heel hammered the broken floor. Stone spider webbed and sank. Riding that savage kick, Ryo became red lightning, faster than a Jonin's shunshin, a body pushed to brutal limits. Target, the combined earth wall. Come on, then, one Aiwa Jonin sneered from behind the barricade. No one could body check this grade of joint defense. At the instant of impact, Kusanagi shifted. Not a chop, but a serpent, a blur of needle points in the same place. Kuzuriasan 9-head dragon flash. No sweeping aura, only speed to the edge of sight, a kill by puncture. SHK. 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 Crack. At the precise point of entry, the wall, fused by multiple Jonin's chakra, spidered with fractures exploding outward. A heartbeat later, Boom, crash. The meter-thick, spike-studded rampart blew open from the center, as if bombed from within. Stone shrapnel tore backward like cannon shot. Goo. URK. No one behind it expected such brute contempt for their defense. Shrapnel and shock chewed through them, the golem armor crazing and sloughing under speed and force. A Jonin nearest the breach took Ryo's carried momentum full in the chest, sternum caved, eyes bulged, dead before he fell. Ryo burst through dust and debris without pause, a blood-baptized god of slaughter, and shot out into the street, into the forming ring of Kusanen. Chapter 100. My father. He's out. Attack. A storm of kunai, shuriken, senbon, even tags, came down like a torrential rain, all of it aimed at the crimson blur bursting into the open. With blades and paper death scissoring from every direction, leaving almost no room to dodge, a glint like ice flashed in Ryo's eyes. His body snapped through microsteps at angles and frequencies naked eyes could not follow, tight pivots, razor slips, each movement threading the gap past the densest kill zones. Observation hockey, full spread. In his vision the lethal trajectories slowed to clarity. Every lift of a wrist, each twitch of an eye, the tell of a shoulder, all of it telegraphed the next point of impact. He shaved past 3 kunai guarding his throat, arched back under a tag that scraped his cheek, and slid sideways through a gale of shuriken. His steps pattered a staccato across the ground, shadow blurring. Extreme speed footwork flowed into close quarters taijutsu. The crowd surged. He threaded it like a ghost, untouched. Kusanagi, in that instant, became a reaper's invitation. Cold light flared. Spulch. The elite Jonin leading the rush lifted his blade only halfway before the point punched through his heart. Crack. Another Jonin's kunai, and his waist, parted in one merciless cut. Gore fanned. A Chunin flung a chain from the flank to bind him. Ryo did not even look. A flick of the wrist drew a perfect arc, the chain, and the arm holding it, spun away. A whisper of air, an ambush from behind. Ryo's body rotated in place against physics, the sword light wheeled. The attacker, and 2 genin beside him, bloomed red at the throat and folded. Every swing harvested one life, or several. Each step, each cut, a gear in a precision-killing machine. The swordcraft learned from the red-haired emperor shone at full in the crush of melee. Kusanagi drank and thrummed, humming an eerie red. Monster. He's too fast. We can't hit him. Don't panic. Bury him in bodies. He'll run out of chakra, out of strength. A grass officer screamed from the rear, trying to steady the line. Run out. Ryo's voice cut through screams and iron, edged with frost. Hey. He stopped moving. He lifted Kusanagi high. Tailed beast scale chakra flooded the blade without restraint. Silver-white fire roared along the edge. Compress. Condense. A destroying pressure spiked upward. The charging Kusanen faltered as a tangible killing will press their skin to ice. Despair rose like a cold tide and smothered their legs. Stop him. Kitsuchi's voice shattered into a distant, broken shriek. Too late. Kusanagi sang, a clear, long note out of the ninth hell, as if the blade itself strained under the force channeled through it. A titanic arc of sword energy fell like divine wrath, Ryo's full power cleaving forward in a 180-degree sweep. VWAAAM. This time the slash was not a taut beam of tens of meters, but a howling tsunami, nearly 20 meters wide, more than 5 meters high, silver-white light saturated with the growl of storm and thunder. Where it passed, space seemed to twist and buckle. Air imploded, vacuum ripping a dead zone in its wake. Crushing. Truly crushing. Kunai, shuriken, senbon, all vaporized on contact like ice flecks in a blast furnace. The dozens of Chunin and genin in the lead line, bodies, weapons, protectors, cloth, touched the edge of that light and, like cheap foam against a red-hot brand, did not even scream, they simply became halves. The slash did not slow. The shattered wall of the stone house planed flat in silence. Shacks and thatch huts met a typhoon's heart, sucked into the storm, torn and rendered to splinters. Flagstones split into a trench several feet deep and nearly 20 meters across. Torchlight guttered, crushed by the shock front. One stroke. In the fan before Ryo, out to nearly 200 meters, everything, things living and not, vanished. The view yawned wide, as if an eraser had gouged a brutal bite out of the village. Silence. Absolute silence sealed what remained of Kusagakure. The survivors, those just outside the arc, those spared only by a low stance and missing an arm or a leg, froze. Their faces were masks of extremity, fear and blankness. Comrades who had stood beside them a breath ago, gone. Around the edge of the scar, limbs littered the ground, the pressurized wake of the slash's wind. Blood gathered in runnels and spilled into the trench. The air went thick sweet with dust and iron. Demon. Judgment, it is judgment. Run. He isn't human. Collapse broke loose. Elite Genin, all will to resist fled. They screamed, sobbed, trampled each other to flee, to get away from the crimson figure at the brink of annihilation, sword blazing with light. Ryo watched the inferno without expression, breath a little rough. Then he moved again, a red bolt, to settle accounts. This time, the wide slash was not even necessary. Kusanagi became silver lines threading the crowd. Every flicker took lives, heads severed, hearts skewered, waists parted. Too fast. Too strong. Any who tried to resist, even those one heartbeat slow from fear, fell in an instant. When rare burly Kusa-janin tried to block, Ryo pulsed his wrist, raw force shattered arms and ribs, the edge finished the rest. Kill. Kusagakure had become a crucible of blood and fire. The once noisy village was now an Avachi wasteland. Flames licked the collapsing roofs, boiling a nauseating sweet tang out of the blood. Bodies everywhere, the gaps between broken walls ran dark red like creeks. Each of Ryo's flashes scored a deeper wound across this man-made hell. At last, his red gaze fixed on a dirt-streaked figure tumbling and crawling at the edge of the chaos. Kitsuchi. Iwa Jonin. Onoki's own son. The pride and elite poise were gone. Mud and blood filmed his protector and face. In his eyes only the pulverized remains of courage. Their combined wall, a joke in Ryo's first pass. His subordinates, already mulch in the path of destruction. A cold premonition strangled his spine. He threw his weight, flailing, desperate to slither away, but every step felt death close another finger. Kusanagi's chill was already breathing on his nape. He glanced back, straight into Ryo's silver eyes, free of any emotion. No mockery. No anger. Only the remote gaze one gives the soon-to-die. No. Kitsuchi's pupils split, reason drowned. A severed arm caught his ankle. He pitched face first into a slick of hot, clotted muck. He rolled, scrambled, throat tearing a not quite human scream. Death's crimson was upon him. Kusanagi's tip trailed tacky threads of blood, wrapped in a cyclone of chakra, falling like a mountain, ripping air, stopping at the fatal point between his brows. Under the blade, all his luck, all his pride, every hour of shinobi drill ground to grit. His mind went white, only one reflex remained, branded in bone. Stop. He gathered the last of his strength and life's instinct into a hysterical, cracking howl that knifed the brief hush of slaughter. My father, Onoki. Time seemed to freeze. The stink of blood, the crackle of fires, the far-off wailing, all blurred to backdrop. Only the sword hanging over Kitsuchi's skull, beating enemy blood, and the face beneath it, twisted by terror into snot and tears, stood carved in broken moonlight and flame. That desperate, crazed declaration plopped into the lake of carnage like a stone, rippling a brief, eerie ring, then sank toward stillness. Kusanagi thrummed, suspended, its tip's blood glob trembling. To be continued. 4 comments 0 vote. Chapter 101. To dust bonus. Kusanagi paused. The tip hovered half an inch before Kitsuchi's brow. A single viscous bead of blood, heavy with its master's killing intent and crushing chakra, trembled there, reflecting a face twisted to ruin by terror, filthy with tears and snot. That hysterical scream, my father, Onoki, split Kusagakure's deathly quiet for a heartbeat, then was eaten by wind, ash, and blood. Ryo's gaze dropped to the heap of mud called Kitsuchi at his feet. Kusagakure. His eyes skimmed the ruin, fire writhing in broken frames, bodies jumbled, blood running like oars through a red canal. The fall of Kusagakure, no different from the drowned whirlpools, no different from the land of rain flattened into battlefield slag. Weakness is original sin. No matter how many die, they are footnotes under great nations' games. And the culprit? Hiruzen will scold for show, perhaps, but with the war gridlocked, Konoha wants his blade. Grass fell. Then grass fell. But this man, Onoki's son, what does he mean to Konoha right now? A cold thought knifed through Ryo's mind. Kill him. Kusanagi's hum deepened. The cost wrote itself. Onoki, old and stubborn, had this late-born son as the axis of his heart. Cut Kitsuchi, and you blind the Tsuchikage, you spear his chest. A raging Onoki would hurl Iwa's full might, cost be damned, to repay Konoha. If the line buckles. If the rivers run with blood. Can Hiruzen hold? Ryo's mouth twitched into a small, cruel curve. And if he cannot, so what? Konoha's lofty advisors, the short-sighted townsfolk, they would only pin a scapegoat, Kamiyama Ryo's fault. If he hadn't killed Onoki's precious boy, the Tsuchikage wouldn't have gone mad. Ryo dragged disaster to our door, he took our sons, our fathers. He could see their faces already. Nuisance. He did not care for himself, but Kushina. Tsunade, that glorious maniac. And Makoto. Caught in the crossfire, they would only suffer. Even if Hiruzen was still mostly wise, Ryo's rescue of Tsunade and the power he had shown had already planted a thorn in the Hokage's back. The elders. Danzo. Even if Hiruzen did not nod, he would look away. So why should Ryo kill Kitsuchi for Konoha? Why carry the blame for them? Why hand them the knife? Why stand alone before the tidal wrath of Iwa? His killing urge thinned, and the ice of mockery grew sharper. Take Iwa's little envoy with him. Back to the blood-swept land of rain. Let Danzo's black heart weigh Kitsuchi's worth. Let root gnaw on Iwa's problem. Ryo brings him in, mission delivered. Waste recycled. Value extracted. But, going back empty-handed besides the hostage. Would he see a share of Kitsuchi's value? Kusanagi trembled. The bead finally fell, pattering across Kitsuchi's terrified face. Trash. Ryo's voice was not loud, but it stabbed the frozen eardrum like an icicle. Kitsuchi's heart seized. Death had not moved on. Your life has a price, Ryo said, stepping forward, the sole of his foot slick with red chakra. But not enough to buy those brittle bones. He stamped the shin. Crack. Bone snapped with a sound that tore the air. Kitsuchi's scream went inhuman. Want to live? Pay for it. Ryo raised his foot again, poised over the other leg. Agony shattered Kitsuchi's last illusions. He understood, it was not his father's name buying mercy, it was that he himself had become stock on a market stall. Stop. What do you want? Money. Intel. He howled, tears and snot mixing with the blood, but the colder fear was the word value in Ryo's mouth. Ninjutsu. Kitsuchi's pupils tightened. Pride as Onoki's son flared one last time. Dream on. Iwa's secret arts aren't. Crack. The second leg shattered. Quadruple A. His scream broke pitch. He nearly passed out. Survival clenched his jaw. He looked into those dead silver eyes, not human. This man did not care. Their secret arts were interest, not the core of the bargain. If life could be spared, Ryo wanted Iwa's secrets, over his corpse. He remembered his father's mantra, the will of stone, and locked his teeth. No matter the torment, Kitsuchi would not talk. The grit irked Ryo. If force could not pry the seal, there were other doors. He hauled Kitsuchi up, flashed with flying thunder god, and rejoined the others. Ryo, who's this? Seeing him reappear, slick with blood, Makoto and the rest finally exhaled. Nawaki eyed the ruin dangling from Ryo's grip, baffled. Makoto. Your Sharingan, can you cast Genjutsu? Ryo ignored Nawaki and looked to her. The quiet Uchiha lifted her gaze, already blood red. Sometime, somewhere in the land of rain's carnage, the twin Tomo had ripened, a little uncanny. No words. The illusion fell. BMM. An unseen lance of will punched into Kitsuchi's ruined mind. Reality tore. Through the pain, the world went red. Ghosts clanked chains out of blood mud, raking his soul. Halved comrades staggered toward him, screaming. Worse, in his mind, sealed seals and chakra roots unspooled without his leave, as if iron hooks ripped memory free. He convulsed, the body's agony compounded by the brain's violation. Ryo stood over him, voice a cold Burin. Added weight rock technique. Lightweight rock technique. Seals. Chakra paths. Effects. Core tricks. From the start. Now. Kitsuchi's mind pried open like a clam under a knife. Secrets, Rock Village core lore, layered with brand seals, peeled like pearls under Ryo's demand and Makoto's demonic Tomo. He rasped them out like a broken machine, snatches of hand signs, meridian roots, choking, coughing blood into every syllable. Ryo listened, memorized. Added weight rock, a mobile gravity field. Perfect furnace for tempering a monstrous body. Light heavy rock, a flight art rare in the shinobi world, priceless. The greatest windfall of this mission lay in the heap of mud at his feet. When he was sure he had wrung what he wanted, that glimmer sank. He nudged Kitsuchi with his toe, the Jonin slumped, more sack than man. Tie him. Bring him. Nawaki's stomach flipped at the sight of what had once been a strutting terror, now meat in a bag, but he grit his teeth and nodded. Kaori, pale, trotted over with rope. There was no pity in her eyes, only a tautness born of survival. The four, with their Iwa VIP, left the furnace that had been Kusagaker. Their road bent back toward the storm-bitten front in the land of rain. Mission complete. Ryo felt no urge to sprint for that meat grinder. The job was done. Their shoulders eased a fraction. No need to hurry back to the downpour and iron. Who knew what death warrant Danzo would throw next? Better to slow the pace, let their eyes graze a land battered but stubborn, where Green still found a way. They eased their steps. For once, no rush. Ryo led, Kusanagi sheathed, the last blood drying black. Nawaki dragged the fainted Kitsuchi. Makoto shadowed him, gaze clear again. The twin Tomo had faded, their strange gleam unlamented. Kaori clung to Makoto's sleeve, trying not to look at the red bundle bumping behind. A rare quiet set in. The sky was a smear of gray, but rain held. They took a narrow path through trees rinsed clean, a touch of life returning. Far from the stink of grass, the air held a softer scent of soil. Nawaki's nerves uncoiled a notch. If Sis learns we not only finished the job, but netted a big fish. He broke off, catching Ryo's eye. Ryo did not turn, but his steps carried an ease that said he held the reins. This calm was bought by his blade. Rest a bit. Kaori asked softly, tired. She was frail to begin with. The long march had been hard. Ryo said, gaze touching a roadside boulder, a decent perch. And then, a scream sliced the stillness. Kaori. Her face blanched whiter than in grass, whiter than death had made it. She shook violently, as if a thunderbolt had struck. Thin fingers clenched her collar. Breath hitched, like a cold hand pressed her throat. Her eyes flooded with terror, staring past them down the road. What is it, Kaori? Nawaki snapped alert, dropped Kitsuchi, and stepped in front of her. Makoto's hand was already on her kunai, body bent into guard. Ryo's body strung tight in the same blink. He spun, silver eyes lancing toward Kaori's line of sight. A faint, clinging foreboding, a predator's scent of blood, screamed warning in his chest. Kaori's teeth chattered. She pointed toward the bend ahead, voice scraping blood from her throat. Something, there. A chakra, so terrifying. She shook like a reed. This was the Uzumaki's birthright, Kagura's mind-eye, sounding its hopeless alarm. That gift had let her slip the grass repeatedly, vanishing into cracks where hunters could not follow, until Ryo's team had found her. That same day, she had felt the kin echo in Nawaki's blood, a quarter line from Uzumaki Mito, and gambled everything to step into the open. Silence. The air congealed. The insects and birds cut off as if strangled. Only the wind moved, pushing the meadow smell past the bend and bringing with it a threat of death. And in that hush, it burst, a sudden, unheralded, bone-deep killing intent that froze marrow. It detonated. It fixed on them. Ryo's pupils pinpricked to needles. Kusanagi sang in its sheath, a sharp, urgent keening it had never voiced before. Who was coming? To be continued. 4 comments 0 vote. Chapter 102. The Heart Hunter bonus. The air ahead warped strangely. Deep in the path, within the thick, crowded shadow of the forest, a swath of darkness swelled, wriggling, pooling. Like a tide surging up from an abyss. Like venomous serpents knotting in a viscous bog. A tangible malice, cold enough to freeze marrow, burst from that growing dark. Vishla. A dozen blades blacker than night, edges so sharp they seemed to slice sight itself, ripped the air without warning. Not physical weapons, threads of chakra, compressed to murderous density. They shredded light, ignored distance, and moved with thunder's speed. Target, Ryo. Earth grudge fear, tendril blitz. Ryo's mouth flattened to a cold line. His left foot hammered back. Force boomed in a ring, spattering hard-packed mud. His body twisted at an impossible angle, spine snapping like a serpent. SHHK, SHHK, SHHK. Air cracked as the threads screamed by. Red strands of hair drifted down. 3 threads that could pierce stone skimmed his brow, flank, and thigh, drilling smoking pits into the wet earth behind him. Others he shed with a whip of waist and shoulder, leaving only afterimages. The deadliest strike, aimed at his throat, met a sudden red arc that split it cleanly aside. Ching! Metal shrieked through the dead forest. Kusanagi's dusky red edge clashed with a black thread, flinging a shower of sparks. The impact rocked Ryo's arm and dragged a half-step gouge underfoot. In raw power, the match was even. The writhing threads hesitated only a breath before curling back like sharks scenting blood, spiraling, stabbing again from fresh angles, weaving a death net. Air shredded to a keening whine. Each strand carried energy enough to bore steel. Take them, Nawaki up front, Makoto rear. Ryo's voice was quenched ice, flat and absolute. He spoke, and his sword was already cutting, no more parries, only severance. Scraw. Compressed red light tore the air, cut flow. A high-frequency veil of edge shimmered before him. It smashed headlong into the volley of black threads. The slicing became a continuous roar, hot knife through hard wax. Splinters of chakra thread spat away like iron filings in a gale. Kusanagi's pure sharpness and the trembling blade art meshed perfectly. Roots of black were sawn apart. The severed cordage snapped back into shadow with a serpent's hiss. But more threads crawled from every quarter, lethal feelers from a living abyss. Go. Makoto's whisper cut quick and low. Her eyes bled red, twin tomo whirling as she pinned every writhing path. She shoved a frozen Nawaki and a wilting Kaori. Nawaki jolted awake, jaw clenched. He heaved the limp Kitsuchi over one shoulder and yanked Kaori with the other, barreling toward thinner trees. Kaori's legs buckled. She half ran, half dragged. A sly thread needled up from the mud for Nawaki's ankle. Makoto flashed left. Her kunai met it at an impossible angle, sparks spat. She danced between the hunters and her charges, Sharingan tracing every filament, her parries rattling like a monsoon on plantain leaves. From the deeper shadow came a cool exhale of breath, a voice tinged with faint disappointment. Most of the pressure lifted at once. Nawaki and Makoto plunged into the side grove, shielding Kaori and hauling Kitsuchi away. The net that bound Ryo ebbed, flowing back into the pulsing dark. Silence returned to the grove's heart, heavier than before. Killing intent condensed, compressing every inch of air until even damp seemed to stall. That darkness at the path's end began to flow, to thin, to sink. A tall, broad form condensed out of it and walked forward. His torn, ash-black robe was stained with soil and dew, blending with the green gloom like a statue clawed up from a tomb. Deep green eyes were set in a face carved by age's ruts, cold and dead. When they found Ryo, they seemed to drink in even the faintest light, leaving only greed and arithmetic. A butcher eyeing a gold-veined carcass. Across the chest and shoulders, his shape bulged, something wrong writhing under cloth. A scent drifted, wet earth, rot, iron. So Onoki's plotting and Danzo's guess were right. Kakuzu, the bounty hunter. Ryo straightened, silver eyes lighting from within, the offended chill of a strong man, and a near-greedy hunger to test himself, flaring like lava in a waking volcano. Kusanagi thrummed low and eager. A dim crimson ran his blade, the tip aimed at the foe, edge hissing the damp air to tatters. Cage class. Ryo's voice rumbled, a thread of heat in it. Perfect. He wanted a worthy whetstone. Kakuzu had walked to his door. And he had flying thunder god. He could leave whenever he wished. 100 million, Kakuzu rasped, sand on steel, each word cold and hard. Is mine. No speeches. The verdict fell even as his hands blurred into seals. Earth style, body hardening. Earth spear. His skin blackened to a metallic sheen, mass and gravity mounting in him like a mountain. Almost simultaneously, the ground convulsed. Stone spears erupted in a forest of spikes at vicious angles, each thrust aimed to murder evasion. Ryo did not back up. He tore forward, a blood-red blur ripping space. Observation hockey, open. Time stretched in the mind. Every spike's birth, angle, and vector sketched itself on a precise map inside him. Each footfall landed in the slit-second gaps, on faces not yet set. Kusanagi flashed to light. Pierce the gale, a plain, perfect thrust. The tip stabbed at leverage points on the worst of the spikes, power focused to a needle. Rock burst dull and heavy. Half-man spikes collapsed from their tips. Cut flow again, blade singing like a dragon. A vibrating edge became a storm wall. Flanking spears hit the invisible gale and skidded, smashing each other to rubble. Ryo leapt and slid through the killing grove, precise, efficient, no waste. Pure instinct, honed to a razor. He was fast, but Kakuzu's next move was faster. As Ryo cut past the last spikes, Kakuzu's hardened left fist clamped, crushing the air, over Ryo's line. A shrill, nerve-saw squeal ripped the grove. Lightning release. False darkness. Blue-white lances detonated, a condensed thunder spear, not a straight shot but a sweeping fan, far faster than the threads, the pressure of it warping the air. It lit Kakuzu's dead face and, for an instant, weight in Ryo's silver eyes. Not a mere follow-up. It blotted the only foothold Ryo could use to jink away. Timing. Angle. Perfect. Ryo's pupils pinholed. Momentum drove him into the spear's path. Block. Steel meant nothing to a natural force sweep that broad. In the crack between thoughts, he abandoned the twist. He spun with the last sliver of forward motion, the body a high-speed gyroscope. Both feet stamped the one flat rock face that had not shattered. It exploded under the recoil. He yanked a reverse burst out of physics. Kusanagi wheeled in one arm. No art now, only force, a falling cleave. Rock sunder. Compressed red light lashed up, head-on into the fan of thunder. Krathom. The forest howled with 10,000 storms. White incandescence swallowed the clearing. Arcs chased like maddened serpents, snapping air. Trees flashed to charcoal and flame. A pressure ring hurled pebbles and splinters in all directions. At the detonation's center, the red cut drove into the lightning and held. A heartbeat of deadlock, then the thunder spear split at the middle, snapped apart by brute red. The storm shredded sideways in a bellow. Ryo burst from the tattered light, flipping away. Char streaked him, worst along the outer left arm, sleeve gone, skin blackened and stinking of sear, bone glimpsed white at the edge. Needle stabs of numbness burrowed to the marrow. Blood touched his lip. He wiped it away with the back of his hand and slid 2 meters in furrows before he locked stance. Kusanagi drooped to the ground, tiny arcs still dancing along it, ringing on. For the first time, Kakuzu's rock-hard face cracked a fraction. Shock flickered in dead green eyes. One sword, split my false darkness. Warm-up's over, Kakuzu rasped, worse than a whetstone scrape. Astonishment sank, greed rising darker and higher. 100 million prize, worthy indeed. He slammed his hands together, no complex seals, only brutal motion. Shish, shish. Air tore. Behind and beside him, space buckled. Thick halos of chakra twisted like open sacks. Raw. 4 inhuman shrieks, pain and fury, ripped up from nowhere. Masks, 4 of them, wrenched out of Kakuzu's body by an unseen hand. No flesh, semi-phantoms of dense chakra. Right shoulder, an ochre face, raw and rocky, hollow-eyed, mouth split in a low bellow. Left shoulder, a cyan face where wind seemed to coil visibly, shape blurred, edges screaming. Right hip, a red face, lava flowing under skin like burning coal, heat chuffing from its slit. Left hip, a blue-white face clenched in lightning, beaked shriek and arcs crackling. Kakuzu's aura vaulted free of fetters, 4 differing storms, earth's weight, winds shred, fires burn, lightning's lash, colliding and mixing around him. Pressure turned air to glue. Birds ripped from branches in panic. The masks hung about him, empty eyes locking Ryo across the distance. All 5 natures, this was how he hunted Cage. Combine, Kakuzu said, 2 stones for teeth. At once the cyan wind mask inhaled, its belly swelling visible to the eye. The red mask puffed with it. Wind pressure. Fire blast. No orders needed, organs of one beast. The wind core fired first, not a simple ball, but a high-speed rotor, a compressed core meant to shred steel. It swelled the instant it left the mouth, yanking leaves and gravel to mince them to dust. An instant later, a sheet of molten red flame raved out, like poured magma. Wind fed the fire. Fire rode the wind. They braided, and daylight died. The wind core blew apart, not as a shockwave, but into a cloud of saw blade cyclones, each a high compression cutter. They plunged into the fire. Fwoo! Crack crack crack. The mass swelled severalfold. Flame reddened to whitish terror. Moisture ripped from the earth. Ground cracked. Dozens of fire serpents, driven by storm and sliced by blades of air, roared outward, sweeping a fan wider than 90 degrees before Ryo. Heat warped the world. Everything shivered in the mirage. Air boiled. The scorching blast rode a pressure keen enough to flinch. The fire wall hit Ryo's front, no room to dodge. Chapter 103. The Throw. Kakuzu's mouth twitched into a cold, rigid curve, as if he could already hear the clink of coins hitting his purse. In the instant the tidal wave of flame crashed toward Ryo, he was cornered. Ahead, a devouring sea of wind and fire. Left and right, walls of invisible, knife-edged wind. Behind, dead ground still sparking with lightning release. Huff, ha. At the razor's edge, Ryo sucked air in with a detonation. His silver eyes pinholed, and under the crushing vice he chose madness. He did not retreat. He inhaled the burning air, bellows chest swelling. Every packed muscle groaned under the load, then locked by greater will. All power, chakra, every last shred of life scraped from the brink, compressed and fused, target, both legs. Stones not yet fully cracked powdered under a thunderclap of force. The recoil launched him like a fired shell, straight into the flame gale maelstrom. He chose the rudest, most brutal road, forward. At the storm's edge his body bent backward from the spine into a drawn bow. Back and core, bone and muscle, every cell howled. Kusanagi rose. HRAAA. Sword followed heart. The dark red light did not arc, it ignited like a hell furnace. A compressed pillar of molten crimson, sharp at its point as if to pierce the void, a furnace at its tail, erupted from Kusanagi. RRRR, boom. Two planes colliding, an eschaton rolling through the trees. White blaze swallowed everything. The flame gale's pallid glare and the crimson column smashed and locked, space itself laced with hairline black cracks. A heartbeat of stalemate, and then, under Kakuzu's disbelieving stare. Schlark, the red column knifed into the storm's core like a hot blade into iron. At the contact point, annihilation thundered. Pallid fire tore. Wind compressed to blades hit a spinning mill and ground to dust. Shredded flame and wind spat like stray bullets, lighting distant trees. Ryo, wreathed in lava red glow, shot from the rupture, an arrow forged in a hell furnace, burning itself out yet carrying killing weight. Man and blade is one. PFT. 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 He was on fire. Half his hair was seared away. Skin was charred and crazed, left side worst, armor ash, muscle smelling of cooked meat, bone winking pale. Fresh wounds layered over lightning burns. But the blaze in his eyes outstripped the blaze on his skin. His right arm trembled from the force he had wrung from it. The tiger's mouth split, blood slipping down the grip. He did not stop. He hit, slid, and lunged, Kusanagi trailing sparks, a blood-red blur again. Target, the lightning mask hovering at Kakuzu's right hip. Kakuzu's pupils finally flashed with real shock and fury. The flame gale, broken head-on. Not in his math. HMPH. The lightning mosque's beak yawned. Blue-white glare tightened to a point, pseudo-darkness, a world-ender's spear, locking the charging crimson for a pin to the void. The wind mask whirled, scalpels of pressure crossing into a death net ahead. The earth mask flashed ochre into Kakuzu, earth spear thickening his hide to stone. Lightning to the throat, wine to the ribs, a double kill. Ryo's silver eyes flared. Observation, open. Time smeared thin. The spear's blinding path, the wind net's blind spots, the instant the ochre glow sank in and his skin took a second lamina, all of it laid out like a slowed blueprint. 3 left, drop. His body moved before thought. At full sprint, he folded like paper and dove left. KRATHOOM. The lightning spear scraped his nape and plowed a trench meters deep. Shish. Wind scalpels kissed scalp and spine, carving trenches to the bone. Blood seared into scabs at once. No pause. At the dive's bottom he pivoted on his left foot, a top swirl, and with that spin he hauled Kusanagi from low to high in a scything crescent. Target, the lightning mask in reach. Skreek. Lightning flared as it tried to harden defense. Too late. His dive and spin lived in the mask's overlap blind spot, timed like a god's fingertip. The dark red edge split the lightning mask down the center. For a breath, the world froze. The mask halved. Blue-white arced madly, a net losing control, snapping and fizzing before going to dust. One heart, down. GHH, ah. Kakuzu screamed, inhuman, like a heart ripped live. His chakra rhythm lurched. Chance. No breath to savor. In the same slice, Ryo's pupils caught the coal-red fire mask at Kakuzu's right hip, its mouth flaring to birth. No second chance. Cost, meaningless. A tenth of a blink before the blast, Ryo ignored skin sizzling, blood loss, bone-deep hurt. He packed what remained, right arm only. Kusanagi shrieked under the load, blade juddering as if to snap. Off. He crushed the charred earth and sprang, shoving the arm with the last of his life. No art, only a savage thrust. Pierce flow, olive pierce the gale crushed to a point, bodies push stacked on top, a dark red needle faster than lightning, straight for the mosque's core. Sensing death, the fire core collapsed inward to a white-hot shield. PFF, SKSH. The tip stabbed the collapsing red, a hot knife into cold tallow, resistance heavy, but the edge, born to kill, bit through. A thunder inside a drum, not explosion, annihilation. The fire mask imploded like a pricked blister. Light dimmed, warped, then shredded into sparks drifting on a sulfur whale. Second heart, down. Cave, part. Ryo spat blood, breath burning. Every wound tore wider in that thrust. Kusanagi nearly leapt from his grip. He clamped harder. He swayed, but his gaze locked the next mark, the wind mask over Kakuzu's left shoulder. Kakuzu's stone face finally broke, twisted rage and a miser's grief for lost assets. Not sorrow, loss. Earth light thickened his hide again. His killing intent peaked. Finish it, lock with stone spears below, a wind drill to the heart, crush under falling pressure. Blood hissed out of Ryo's charred skin, steaming hopelessness. The left arm was gone to numbness, lightning and fire's shared feast leaving bone peeking white. Every fiber screamed. Strength ebbed like a falling tide. Kakuzu's greedy focus pinning him. And then, from the deepest place, the swordsman's soul he had forged under the red-haired emperor's shadow roared. One more. The cry was cracked and sanded, but it carried a terminal courage. It jarred even Kakuzu's control, a flicker of disbelief in those wrinkled green eyes. He still has a last move. Ryo's silver blaze exploded, bright enough to outshine the fire on him. Not chakra. Not muscle. Will, burning the soul. Observation, beyond the limit. Every wild arc around him, each micro-path of the wind drill's inner streams, every spike's microsecond of birth from the earth below, even the grain shift of Kakuzu's twice-hardened skin, all of it etched with icy clarity into his mind. Time dragged long in thought, warped at the edges. His body moved before intent. He abandoned defense wholly. He poured his last filament of chakra, the dregs rested from burning life, and the will to pierce the sky and sever fate, into his right hand, into the partner that had sung through 100 battles, Kusanagi. No slash. No stab. Those demanded paths and space he no longer owned. Throw. The instant the earth spears burst from below, stone, iron hard with earth release, drilled through his left calf and outer thigh. Pain flared like torn lightning. GHH. Blood flooded his mouth. He crushed it between his teeth and swallowed. No hesitation. He used the micro-hitch of the impalement to finish a perfect, instinct-born cast. Off. Kusanagi left his hand like a red meteor. Chapter 104. Damn you, Senju Tobarama bonus. VRMMM. Kusanagi left his hand. Not a tossed kunai. Blood mist wound around the dark red blade until it became a streak wrapped in crimson flame. Fast, past the limit of Kakuzu's tracking. Faster than the screaming wind drill itself. The sword light carved a lethal arc through smoke and scrambled energies, drawing a gorgeous, ghastly line in the air. Straight for the wind mask hovering over Kakuzu's left shoulder. For the heart inside. The angle was wicked, the timing perfect. It slipped past Kakuzu's bullish neck where fury had tilted him, around the densest earth-hardened glow plating his chest, and went for the control note of the wind. Scree. The wind mask's cry was thin and not human. It felt the blood-lit edge and the will sharp enough to cut souls, and knew annihilation. It dumped power from the wind drill at once, yanking everything inward to a core, a densest wind release barrier, a screaming cyclone compressed to a bead, keen enough to slice steel. One throw. One kill. Only one. Thunk. Time froze to a 10,000th. The blood-wreathed red bolt hit the wind core, no flourish, like a suicide spear. No sky-rending boom. Just the thick tear of blade through hide and energy ripped apart at the seams. Crack, whump. Fractures raced across the mask. With a twisted, failing shriek, the cyan face burst like a bladder stuffed with hurricanes, shattered to ragged quarters. Wind chakra, freed of core and command, detonated like a rogue eye of storm. Compressed razors, shards of gale, shot outward, scoring the earth into deep trenches around Kakuzu and kicking a storm of ash and grit. Even the air seemed cut to ribbons. A third mask, wind's heart, down. The storm born of the wind's failure had not even finished hissing when. Graaaaaaaaa. Kakuzu howled, worse than before, pain and disbelief twisted into a beast's gut scream. His massive, iron body buckled like a spine hit by an invisible hammer. The ragged cloak of black thread swelled and heaved. Under the skin, 100 invisible serpents writhed and lost control. His rock-dark hide dulled by the eye. Wrinkles deepened. In an instant he aged 10 years. Triple hit. 3 core hearts gone in a chain. Not just a plunge in chakra and force, a wound to life's root. The soul-level rip made him lose control of body and the 2 remaining hearts. The mad wind razors cut indiscriminately, raking earth-hard skin that suddenly lagged to respond. The stone spears and wind drill's death crush evaporated with that loss of control. What had been a roaring auger for Ryo's back guttered like a snapped kite, light dimming, spin dying, and at the last instant, fell short. Even so, the vestige of the drill ripped new trenches across his already chewed back, bone showing white as blood fountained. The spears through his legs burned with layered pain. Blood loss stacked and screamed. Kaif, PFFF. Ryo could not hold it down. A gout of hot blood, flecked with charred gut, burst from his mouth. Darkness lapped at his vision. His mind flickered like a candle in wind. Do not fall. Not here. A voice hammered from the soul. Chance, bought with a paralyzed lower half and a dead left arm, a slit to survive. Pain beyond limits woke an animal will. His silver eyes dimmed, but the last sparks leapt and snarled. He slapped the stone spear skewering his left leg, snapping its tip with raw force, crack. Both legs wrenched. Agony nearly blacked him out, but his monsters will tore the right leg free of its spike. The left was gone, no motion there. He dropped to one knee in blood and char, breath like a bellows, every inhale tasting of hot rust. The body was at collapse. Even lifting a hand was ordeal. Far off, Kakuzu hunched and retched up dark green, rotten-smelling syrup, the earth grudge fear weeping from wounded cores. He raised a face wrinkled and wrenched by pain and rage. Dead green eyes burned with hate in an animal's killing. The last earth mask hovered at his breast, guttering yellow to keep the host upright. The lightning and fire masks were ash. Stray sparks snapped out in the dark. Why, you little filth? Kakuzu's voice scraped like a grinder on rusted iron. I will crush your bones, make every inch of you pay. His huge, hardened right hand lifted, shaky, slower than before, but the killing will was naked and close. No more masks. He wanted to pulp the brat who had cost him 3 gold mines. 100 million. He only needed the head. Ryo lifted his face into that venomous stare. Soot and blood painted him. Red hair hung scorched and ragged. A bright line of blood tugged his lip. And in that ruin, his silver eyes twisted into a hideous, icy smile full of contempt. Ha, ha. Weak, but clear. Old man, your heart's pricey. He glanced at the last, ochre mask at Kakuzu's chest. 3, just to make a dent. Veins bulged on Kakuzu's brow. He roared. The hardened fist fell with a wind that smothered breath. Death rushed again. And when the fist was less than a yard away, air ripping the burnt hairs at Ryo's brow. Ryo's only working hand flicked up. No weapon, only a kunai. A plain one, sticky with his blood. A tiny, jarring motion. Flying, thunder god. His whisper was a gnat, and a spell. Space shivered, weak but distinct, rippling from that bloody kunai as its center. His final out, apart from the last throw, his door from the gallows. Kakuzu's pupils stabbed to pinpoints. Flying thunder god. Senju Tobarama. No, impossible. Terror drowned the rage in a blink. The boy's identity, this lost space art, how? But the fist was thrown, too close. Old strength gone, new not born. No way to change it in time. Ryo's cold smile cut deeper at Kakuzu's face, twisted by shock, fear, disbelief. 100 million. He spent the last of his voice on 4 clear words, the final verdict. Just went up. The moment the words fell, Ryo, and the bloody kunai, vanished a hair's breadth before impact. As if he had never been there. Left behind, a crater from that iron fist. Scorched earth. A snapped spear through Ryo's left leg. Sprays of hot blood. Smoke and iron-thick air. The mist blows rebound staggered Kakuzu sideways, injuries howling. Huh. He stared at nothing, at the pit his cracked fist had made. Disappeared. Silence fell. Only the night wind prowled the wrecked ground, playing the crisped leaves and dust. Kakuzu stood, hulking and locked, like a ruined statue scoured by 1,000 winters. His anger and killing will, suddenly targetless, drained and flooded back as something larger, colder, and choking. 3 priceless hearts. The core's tearing ache kept screaming, the loss was not a dream. That 100 million mark, not only shredded 3 hearts and rode out all his assaults, he slipped the surest kill under Kakuzu's very eyes. Flying, thunder god. The rusted, rotten sour throat forced the words out, chill to the bone. Senju Tobarama. A nightmare name leapt across his mind. A godless, traceless space leap, who else? A 13-year-old, drove him to near full output, cost him 3 hearts, and then walked away. Kakuzu felt bile and blood surge. The world dimmed at the rim. Not just money. Decades of savings, hearts, looted in one night, and his hunter's pride, trampled. PFF'd. Dark green, viscous fluid frothed with blood from his mouth. He lifted his face to the black sky. The night's cold slid through his tattered robe, and into a heart like a broken, empty field. Konoha, Ryo. He ground the names out between teeth, hatred and a deeper fear burning the sound. And flying thunder god, Senju Tobarama. PFT. Pain at the cores and a tempest of rage finally toppled what little he held together. More green syrup spat from him. The big body sagged, kneeling to catch breath. Every inhale was a bellows ripping itself to pieces. Meanwhile, on grass country's border, in a hidden fold of hills. Firelight nudged back the dark and the mountain chill, not the cold in 3 young hearts. Nawaki leaned on stone, sweat and dust streaking his face, panting. One hand clamped his ribs, the black threads had carved deep, not mortal, but down to bone. Beside him, Kitsuchi lay pale and out cold. Kaori hugged her knees by the fire, small body trembling out of her control, eyes wide and unfocused, only the horror of surviving. Makoto stood straight on a high rock at the ravine's mouth, twin Tomo scarlet maxed out, staring toward where Ryo and Kakuzu fought. Her face was snow pale. She had all but bitten through her lip. At this range, miles and mountains between, she could see nothing. Chapter 105, Physical Healing. The Kusanagi sword was thrust diagonally into the scorched earth, its blade coated in sticky blood plasma and etched with burn marks from lightning arcs. Ryo's figure suddenly coalesced within the rippling distortion of space inside the mountain cave, like a shattered clay statue forcibly pieced back together. His left arm was charred black, burned to charcoal. Skin and muscle were completely carbonized, with bone faintly visible beneath. Across his back, a massive laceration gaped wide, flesh curled outward, blood dripping from the tattered hem of his dark red coat. Each drop struck the cold rock floor with a heavy, sticky sound. Ryo. Naoki's throat tightened, his pupils constricting. The pain in his ribs forgotten, he rushed forward in panic. Don't move. Makoto's sharp cry rang out, tinged with fear. In a flash, she appeared at Ryo's side. Her crimson Sharingan spun rapidly, piercing through the shredded remains of his clothing to reveal the horror beneath. Bones riddled with cracks, internal organs displaced from shock, and faint traces of poisonous chakra gnawing at his heart. The air in the cave froze. Only Ryo's ragged breathing and the crackle of the campfire remained. Go! Go! Ryo rasped, voice hoarse to the point of tearing. Each word dragged more blood from his throat. Kakuzu isn't dead, he could be coming. His remaining right arm rose weakly, gathering what little chakra he had left, a flicker so faint it resembled a firefly in winter. Sweat mixed with blood trickled down his face, stinging his eyes. Just as Ryo was about to perform another jutsu, Kaori suddenly stepped forward. Without hesitation, she stretched out her slender arm and said with unwavering determination. Bite me, brother Ryo. She possessed the unique healing bloodline of the Uzumaki clan, capable of restoring even the gravest wounds. Ryo had rescued Kaori from the torment of Kusagakure because he refused to let her become a tool, a living medical instrument for others to exploit. If he now healed himself by feeding on her blood, how would he be any different from those beasts who once enslaved her? But Kaori's clear eyes showed no fear or hesitation. She looked directly at him and spoke each word with crystal resolve. Brother Ryo, you're not like them. You're the one who saved me from that hell, who gave me hope again. I'm doing this willingly. If you won't heal by biting me, then I won't go with you anymore. Facing Kaori's pure, determined gaze, Ryo knew this wasn't the time to hesitate. He gripped her small, scarred hand, his throat moving painfully. Filled with guilt, he finally lowered his head and bit gently into her arm, carefully drawing her chakra. A miracle occurred almost instantly. Ryo's terrible wounds began to heal before their eyes. The Uzumaki clan's regenerative ability was nothing short of terrifying. The blackened wound on his arm, once burnt to the bone, shed its dead flesh as a surge of life force tore through it. Around the scorched bone, tender new tissue blossomed and spread at an impossible rate, weaving together like vines. The torn flesh on his back rapidly fused, sealing the gaping wound. Broken tendons snapped back into place, displaced organs gently guided by invisible hands. Fresh blood surged through his veins, dissolving internal injuries one by one. The unbearable pain began to fade. The scorched skin and dried blood peeled away from Ryo's body, revealing pale new skin beneath. The once gaping wounds healed into faint scabs. But at that moment, he felt the small hand in his grasp trembling violently. Kaori's once rosy face turned deathly pale. Her body went limp, as though her bones had vanished, and she collapsed softly. The determination in her eyes dimmed to gray, her breath faint, fingers twitching weakly. She was too young, her chakra and life force still undeveloped. Her body couldn't endure such massive depletion. Seeing her on the verge of collapse, Ryo immediately stopped the absorption. Enough. Kaori. Ryo roared hoarsely, pain in his voice. The little girl was as fragile as a candle flickering in the wind. Makoto rushed forward and caught her before she fell. Watching Kaori's selfless act, Makoto's heart tangled with sorrow, tenderness, and a subtle, guilty unease. Move. Ryo's voice exploded like thunder, rough and commanding, leaving no room for argument. His right arm shot out, gripping both Naoki, who carried the unconscious Kitsuchi, and Makoto, who held Kaori, by the shoulder. The flying thunder god mark flashed in his mind, set at a chaotic stone forest near the border of the land of rain. Space twisted violently. Vision stretched, tore, and reformed. It felt as though their bodies were being crushed by invisible force. Naoki barely suppressed his nausea, clutching the limp Kitsuchi in his arms. Light shifted. The biting cold air reeked of scorched soil and gunpowder, the borderlands of aim. Lead-gray clouds hung low, pressing heavily overhead. Bolts of white lightning flickered silently across the depths of the sky. Beneath them lay a wasteland of mud and stone, jagged rocks rising like the fangs of dead beasts, scattered with twisted metal and dark stains near cratered pits, marks of acid rain and endless conflict. For Naoki, returning to this hellish place oddly felt like safety. Take Kaori. Ryo scanned the terrain quickly, pointing toward a narrow fissure between two boulders. His voice was cold and absolute. Hide inside with Kitsuchi. Stay put. Anyone who approaches, kill them. Under his ragged red hair, his silver eyes were sharp as blades, cutting straight through Naoki. Naoki stiffened, then nodded hard. Wordlessly, he took the unconscious Kaori from Makoto's arms, wrapping the small girl in his cloak. Dragging the exhausted Kitsuchi and carrying Kaori, he crawled into the crevice, vanishing into the shadows of the rocks, silent, alert, and watchful. Makoto stood quietly beside Ryo. Her Sharingan had faded, but her eyes still rippled with emotion. Ryo's last word, kill, still echoed like a hammer blow. She sensed his true intent, not just to pursue Kakuzu, but to protect them from another danger, Shimura Danzo. Especially now that Kaori's miraculous healing ability had been exposed. Ryo felt Makoto's gaze. When he turned, he saw only her downcast lashes, her hair shadowing her face. I'll find Tsunade, he said, voice low and urgent, meant only for her. Kaori must be under her protection before she enters Konoha. That old vulture will never let a bloodline like hers go free. Tsunade's protection, the only shield strong enough to oppose Danzo's ambition and safeguard the last Uzumaki heir. Without another word, Ryo focused inward, locking onto the flying thunder god mark he had secretly placed behind Tsunade's shoulder during her last battle, a mark she never noticed. Target. Tsunadheim. Teleport. A sharp hum of space distortion. Ryo vanished from the cold rain of aim, leaving behind only a swirl of dust and falling leaves. Damn it! Damn it! Kakuzu's roar, deep and grinding like metal on stone, exploded through the scorched forest. A green blur smashed through tree trunks and landed heavily before the cave's mouth, the ground cracking beneath his hardened feet. His patched-together body was wrapped in torn gray robes, the remaining earth grudge mask on his chest flickering with dim yellow light. His dead green eyes blazed with fury hot enough to melt iron. He scanned the remnants, the bloodstains, the ashes, the scuffed ropes, the crushed leaves. Every trace stoked the fire in his chest. His heart, or what remained of his hearts, seethed with pain. 3 of his precious hearts destroyed. Decades of accumulation, gone. His bounty reward, gone. Humiliated by the flying thunder god technique, unforgivable. I'll skin you alive, he growled, voice thick with venom. He lunged forward, following faint traces of chakra and dragged footprints. His massive arm swept through the air like a blade, smashing into the stone wall hiding their escape. The cave wall exploded into shards, stones pelting outward like shrapnel. But when the dust cleared, he found only emptiness, no bodies, no sound, only the lingering ripple of distorted space. The flying thunder god. Senju Tobarama. Kakuzu's knuckles cracked as he clenched his fists. He glared at the gaping hole before him as if trying to pierce through the void and see that cursed man beyond it. 3 hearts lost. The bounty gone. His pride shattered by a ghost that could vanish into thin air. Fury and humiliation burned through the remnants of his sanity. A thick, dark green clot of fluid burst from his mouth, chunks of viscera mixed in, splattering across the scorched ground with the stench of decay. His body trembled violently, the glow of his remaining mask dimming to near extinction. He clutched his chest as the mask emitted a low, uneasy hum. Kamiyama. Ryo. The name hissed from between his teeth like poison. His face twisted into something monstrous, rage, greed, humiliation, and unwilling fear mixing into one ugly expression. Next time, he muttered hoarsely, staggering into the shadows of the forest, I'll crush you into coins. A sharper hum than before split the air. Ryo's form shimmered and vanished from the cold, wet borderlands. The wind howled through the empty clearing, scattering broken stones and withered leaves. Then came heat. The heavy dampness of aim was replaced by a dry warmth, tinged with the scent of herbs. Ryo stumbled slightly as he tore free from the violent pull of space. The air was thick with disinfectant, blood, and alcohol. His vision swam, but his senses quickly focused on the massive, dark green medical tent before him, its canvas stained with dried blood. Tsunade's field camp. The flap of the tent hung heavy, but lamplight glowed from within. Raised voices, angry and tense, filtered through the air. Ryo steadied himself, forcing down the ache in his chest. He lifted a dirt-stained hand and peered through the haze of medicine and smoke, straight toward the source of the argument. Inside, he saw a familiar mane of golden hair flick sharply as the woman turned, her back to him, locked in a heated confrontation with a shadowy figure radiating a chilling aura. To be continued.